Hello, Culture Matters podcast. We are back with another Beyond Order. Rule number 3 today. Do not hide unwanted things in the pod. Before I introduce the rule, here's a quote just for this episode. Something we cannot see protects us from something we do not understand. The thing we cannot see is culture in its intrapsychic or internal manifestation. The thing we do not understand is the chaos that gave rise to culture. If the structure of culture is disrupted, chaos returns. We will do anything to defend ourselves against that return. Preface to Maps of Meaning. I'm opening up this, I believe I'm opening up this series, this breakdown, this series of breakdowns or interpretations of Beyond Order, rule by one. I've done rule 1 and 2 so far. I believe I'm opening up this series with this quote from Maps of Meaning because these rules are an extrapolation of the work of Maps of Meaning. I think that preface, that opening paragraph or that opening sentiment is a beautiful encapsulation of what these rules practically imbue the reader that takes them seriously. In an attempt to take these rules seriously myself and learn them more deeply and stand up straight with my shoulders back, rule 1 and 12 rules for life, and understand these concepts on a practical or behavioral level, not just a conceptual, philosophical, or whatever level. Actually reading the rule, highlighting and taking notes, things that I never did in the past. Here's my book. Elevating my own self, going through these rules. I open up with that quote because I think it's like I said, a beautiful encapsulation of what these rules represent. The deeper theory, that's an accumulation of questions. What is belief? What is evil? Why do we believe the things that we believe? So today we're talking about rule 3. Do not hide unwanted things in the fog, which follows up rule 2. And this is Beyond Order, 12 more rules for life. Following up on rule 2, imagine who you could be and aim single-mindedly at that. And rule 1, do not carelessly denigrate social institutions and creative achievements. I challenge you to go listen to those rules in the Culture Matters podcast if you haven't. But in an abbreviated sense, rule 2 is an emphasis on myself as an individual. Proceeding rule 1, which is an awareness of my place in the culture, right? Do not carelessly denigrate or react to unconsciously or tear down. Spend your energy, your mental, spiritual, emotional, physical, social energy, financial energy, overly focusing on the culture, the West, or others' creative achievements, right? Denigrate social institutions, the actual society you're in, and the creative achievements as a consequence, things that we otherwise unaware to ourselves take for granted. Don't focus on the group. That's like the group rule, or like the tribe rule, or the macro rule. Rule 2, look at yourself. Imagine who you could be. So it's like rule 1 brings us into awareness around the topic and how easy it is for us to fall into an over focus on the other or the they or the everything outside of ourselves, like that abdication responsibility where we're going to. And rule 4 and rule 2 is that refocus on myself. And now that I'm imagining who I could be, so I could focus single-handedly at that, single-mindedly rather at that, I got my chapter right here. Now I'm called not to hide unwanted things in the fog. Visually, I look at like rule one as like a circle, a circle around the individual. And rule two is like the individual. Now I'm confronting myself. I've been looking at the circle. I've been overly focused on the circle, everything outside of myself, those mediums, those institutions, the overall macro, and negating my individual responsibility with myself. Now I am looking at myself from rule two. I am aiming single-mindedly at that. But how do I actually start that process? One thing is do not hide unwanted things in the fog. There are two interesting examples, like because we're gonna my view of what the fog is. These two examples. One was the Dr. Peterson's wife's father one day, blew up over the plates. The plates are so small, and his mother-in-law basically, you've been eating on these little plates for decades. Why say something now? Just using that as a funny, like, I guess, easily overlooked, inconsequential, anecdotal example of how easy it is for time to pass and little things become big things, like this over exaggerated response to something that was so normal, so subtle, so habitual, so not a big deal, so insignificant, we would think in the macro, yet meaningful enough for some type of hyperbolic or dramatic reaction, somewhat out of nowhere. Just using that as a fun example to make the point that as as humans, as people, as individuals, part of families and groups, how easy is it for us to not speak our mind, to create almost the self-tyranny? And what are the consequences of not speaking one's mind over a period of time? And yeah, what are the results of not sharing what one thinks? Another example was a married couple, many years, decades they've been married, and in this particular case, the wife has issues with decisions that the husband's made with the home. And ultimately, this symbolically, the home represents everything of the husband, and a disequilibrium of the wife and the husband, in the sense like if it's 90% husband, 10% wife, the wife's been feeling that it should be 50-50 or 60-40 or some different distribution, if I use that example, but saying nothing for many decades, and how eventually that ends in the divorce. Little things become big things when they're unexpressed. It's like compound interest, but inverted compound interest. Truth unspoken becomes poison, as Nietzsche would say. So rule three, do not hide unwanted things in the fog. The most compelling piece as a reader, student of this rule is the dynamic being presented to us between sins of omission and sins of commission. I think there was a quote in it about the because well, before I read the quote, it was a sin of omission and a sin of commission are inextricably linked. Think about it. Let's say that somebody in a team meeting, something is brought up in a team meeting that I don't address, something that I think is wrong. That's not the way it is, or that's not how it happened. But I say nothing. I'm afraid to speak up. I omit my thoughts of something I believed was important. There was I didn't expect that to be said. I didn't because that, to me, that's not what happened. That's not how it happened. So that unexpected outcome in the meeting of my peers, of my superiors, creates a state of it's an anomalous state. Yeah, it's an anomalous occurrence. It's out of what I expected. That's going to produce anxiety. To reconcile that anxiety, I say something. I speak my mind. And in a sense, I could be wrong. By not speaking my mind, I'm assuming omniscience, that I'm right. And in that, I'm holding back. And now that's going to create internal contradiction that alters the fabric of reality, of the navigation of reality by all of those participating in that meeting. I'm not saying what's on my mind. If I'm not saying what's on my mind, if I produce that state of anxiety, this is like do not hide unwanted things in the fog. Where do those thoughts go? They go somewhere in my mind. They go somewhere potentially in my body. There's a long-term physiological response. That's what Dr. Peterson's alluded to with these examples. Like over the decades, they get divorced over what? Some paintings, over some house decor? No, over the things that have never been said and expressed in communication that have built stories and developed and altered the personal reality of the individual present. And eventually they blow up. They're revealed physiologically, psychologically, neuropsychologically, in that over expression, something that's nothing or meaningless becomes so meaningful, it's expressed exponentially in an explosion over a plate or an argument of a couple that's now in discussions over divorce, over something inconsequential, or because it's not really about that inconsequential topic that they're debating or arguing over. It's about every topic that was ever debated and how it was debated and who won and who lost and what was felt and the misalignment between the two parties. So in this, and the lack of trust and the lack of integration, the lack of equilibrium and homeostasis and synthesizing anxiety in the world, being in the world. And so in this meeting, right, this example meeting, so I don't say what I think. I don't say what I feel. My intentions are pure. I'm afraid, maybe. I'm afraid of the consequences, or that's one side, or I'm just political and I'm malevolent. I have an agenda. Those are just two simple examples: the coward and the schemer. But let's just say the coward, like which that's an aggressive term, but there's a cowardly act. That's is the point here, is that sins of omissions have consequences. Because if I don't say what I think and feel and believe in that meeting, my brain, I am going to have to rationalize to maintain homeostasis. I'm going to have to self-deceive. There's a self-deception because myself, which has a relationship with me, my past, future, my present, goals, navigating past experience, is relating to the others and the current state of the environment. So by not saying what I think and feel, I have to actually rationalize. There's a self-deception as a consequence of not saying what I think. And the implicit or the explicit argument here is that sins of omission lead to sins of commission. The more that I omit, the more I lie to myself. The more I lie to myself, the more likely I am to lie. Like omissions become commissions. And I think that's such an important statement. If a large swath of a group of a population omit, what if the percentage, and this is me just like thinking off the cuff, a percentage of psychopathics, sociopathics, Machiavellians grows from this normal, let's say if it's normally 4% of the population, but the 96% of the population that lives in a spectrum of omission and commission, white lies, right? Different than big lies. That 96% grows to 86, and the psychopathic grows from 4% to 14%. So it's a 400% increase to Machiavellian, like the dark triad in the culture if that happens, what happens next? And maybe that's the Reichstag. Maybe that's the Hutu and the Tutsis. Maybe that's like these genocides occur as a consequence of sins of omission and sins of commission, sins of omission growing as a consequence of fear, as a consequence. And this goes back to the beginning quote. And the whole purpose of the series on these rules is something that you cannot see protects us from something we do not understand. The thing we cannot see is culture in its intrapsychic and internal manifestation. The thing we do not understand is the chaos that gave rise to culture. When the structure of culture is disrupted, chaos returns. We will do anything to defend ourselves against that return. We'll do anything to defend ourselves against this chaos. And even that means adopting an ideology, adopting lies, adopting something false. In a tyranny, everyone lies all of the time. In like, so then that's used, you know, Soviet Union gulag. Wow, where, what's this rule again? Oh yeah, I was gonna read. So this is, part one of do not hide unwanted things in the fog. This, this, you cannot hit a target you refuse to see. You cannot hit a target you refuse to see. That's the quote. You can't hit the target you refuse to see. So if I refuse to speak, I'll rationalize, alter my perception of reality. The trash goes in the heap, it grows over time, and my aim becomes less clear. I'm in the fog. I can't see. I can't see. I can't develop the courage to see outside of myself. I can't see because I'm clouded. I don't even know who I am. I lose my eye. The individual loses itself in the tyranny, in the totalitarian system. And this, every one of us, me, you, whoever's listening, we can put ourselves in our own totalitarian system if we don't this, take note and take it very seriously. Take take stock. Do not hide unwanted things in the fog because you'll be more likely to denigrate social institutions, to castigate the world as an abdication of responsibility and criticize the achievements of others. And you won't imagine who you could be and ain't single-mindedly at that. You won't do that because you can't see who you could be because and this is discussed at length in Rule 3 is like mental illness, according to Freud, was a consequence of repression, which is that building up of what's unsaid and or what's path projected and pathologized. There's a whole list of helpful, I wrote these down: denial, reaction formation, displacement, identification, rationalization, intellectualization, sublimation, projection. Look up these terms, study these terms, use these terms, but do not hide unwanted things in the fog. See, the world, the danger of the world isn't just bending the truth and lying to others. It's taking stock of how easy it is for us to deceive ourselves as a consequence to facing the unknown, facing anxiety. When the structure of culture is disrupted, chaos returns. We will do anything to defend ourselves against that return. We'll come up with whatever story, whatever rationalization. Oh, I'll quit tomorrow. I'll leave the organization tomorrow. I'll start that business tomorrow. I'll read that book tomorrow. I'll take that course tomorrow. I'll do that. I'll have that conversation with that employee tomorrow. I'll have that conversation with my partner in business tomorrow. I'll have that conversation with my life partner tomorrow. I'll bring that up to my parents tomorrow. I'll talk to my kids about that tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes because my present is my tomorrow is inextricably linked. Tomorrow, as in what's potential and behavior and outcome. The synthesis of the two is inextricably linked with what I do in the moment. And the moment has to do with the past and the accumulation of trash in the trash heap and what the consequences are of that trash heap exploding. It's going to come out over the plate. It's going to come out in that harsh divorce no one saw coming. Do not hide unwanted things in the fog. Rule 3 of Beyond Order. A perfect buildup to Rule 4. Notice that opportunity lurks where responsibility has been abdicated. I'm going to abdicate responsibility at some level or all levels. If I hide unwanted things in the fog, I can't see where I'm going. I can't respond accordingly in a courageous, reasonable, rational, empathetic, compassionate, necessary sense. And so I'm going to spend more time. Um, I might just get completely sucked into ideology, sucked into denigrating social institutions and creative achievements, and become bitter, resentful, nihilistic. And hey, if I'm really talented and really smart and really good, I might just have that Luciferian pride and reduce everything to its parts and look at everything as meaningless and start looking down on people and down on others and all of a sudden become the tyrant or the Auschwitz guard. I mean that this is ultimately like these are some of the bigger themes that are being addressed in maps of meaning in on a macro sense that have led to this infamy and popularity of this clinical psychologist from Canada, right? It must mean something to our culture today that tens of millions of people are taking notice of these conversations. What does it mean? How much have we been hiding in the fog in our culture? So, I mean, there's so many practical levels to talk about this from a business standpoint, the business podcast in simple terms. If we're in the position, that's why part of the job of the leader in the group is to spur conversation, is to embody the necessary preconditions for truth to occur, the pursuit of truth to occur. The necessary preconditions for truth to occur: trust, cooperation, respect of the group, so that ideas can be focused on, problems can be focused on, potential could be focused on. We're having an effective team meeting around where are we going? Why are we going there? How can we get there? What's in front of us? Who has an idea? Who's bringing a solution to the table? How can we get through this together? Where are we going? Why are we going? How are we getting through this together? What's next? If I'm in a position of authority, influence, and power, I'm the leader of the group, and I am omitting what I think, and I am, forget about, you know, obvious. Like it's so obvious that the liar, the leader that's the liar is going to destroy their people eventually. But what about the leader that's afraid to embrace the tougher conversations with their people? They'll destroy their people over time. Do not hide unwanted things in the fog. How does Enron, see, like on a practical business level, how did Enron happen? Sins of omission, sins of commission. How did it happen? Bernie Madoff was like there's a lot of literature on his psychology. he has been stated saying many times, like it started with just one choice. Let me take money from here. I will pay that back later. Hell is paved with good intentions. That break of integrity, the lack of the integrated self, like I will do it later. I'm abdicating responsibility. I'm filling that space with an ideology. I'm filling it with a narrative, a false narrative that I can fix it later when nothing empirical can demonstrate that I can fix it later because I haven't been able to fix it now, which is what led me as Bernie to say, I'm going to take money from here and I'm going to put it here. Because that was the whole thing was the Ponzi started with Bernie, who was an investor, taking the easy route when all the money went down. It dipped, trying to live up to the Joneses, live up to the that level of distribution. Oh, let's just take money from here and put it here. Now, this is the interesting thing about how little we as a culture, as a society, understand about human nature and the human psychology is that it's almost like, what are you talking about? That guy clearly was a criminal, clearly was a liar, clearly was terrible. Like, first of all, it's a liar's paradox. Why would we believe what he said at the very beginning? That's a good point. But what if it did start with a rationalization that led to another, that led to another, that led to another? If we believe in compound interest and how that builds wealth, right? A penny doubled every day for 30 days becomes 5.3 million plus or something. What about compounded omissions, compounded rationalizations, compounded deceit? How long before the person becomes a pathological liar? That's what this rule is about. Understanding where that comes from and how the non-genetically predisposed psychopaths can become Machiavellian and break down a culture, abdicate responsibility. Those are all extremes. It can get lost in the extremes. It's like it is hard. It's as it's it the degree to which it's difficult to speak up at work would have a relationship with the integrity of the individual and the tyranny of the group. They have a relationship, and we have to understand the relationship. You put the most integral person, integrated person in a tyranny, and that's the metaphorical Christ being crucified as a consequence of saying the truth as it related to the totalitarian corporation. Don't go against our policies. Don't try to change our value system. Don't, well, really, that was the Christian versus the Jewish culture. And then the hammer was the Roman corporate. It was like a battle of values, right? It was the old values, the Old Testament versus the founder of the New Testament, or the hero, the exemplar of the New Testament. The old and the new, before there was a new, they came together and they were in conflict of story, conflict of values, conflict of axioms. And the corporation came down, boom, we'll fine, we'll crucify him, whatever you say. What is the truth, Pontius Pilate? That was the corporation coming down hard on the critical carpenter, the critical janitor. Hey, why do the financials look messed up? Why is the CEO driving the corporate jet uh, to pick up their poodle? That doesn't really seem like it has anything to do with shareholders. Fire that person immediately. Keep, this is part one. Rule three, do not hide unwanted things in the fog. There will be consequences. Keep following on along. Keep following along. Rule beyond the book today is Beyond Order, 12 more rules for life. This is rule three. We've gone through rule one. If you haven't listened to rule one, go over there. Do not carelessly denigrate social institutions or creative achievements. Rule two, imagine who you could be and aim single-mindedly at that. Rule three, look out for rule four. we will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast. Share this with somebody that likes Peterson's work or someone that doesn't.